is for the win. This 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 is for the win. 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 This is for the win.
Welcome back to the CPENN4THEWIN show. This is your host, Charles Penn, and we are back for 2021. This is the very first episode of 2021. We're on episode number 16. Hope everybody had a safe and nice Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. To all my subscribers, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And as we move forward in 2021, we're going to make the show even better. And it starts with today. Now, to start out today's show, I know the association just tipped off. We are a few games in within the first week. So I'm gonna give you guys a little early season breakdown and what I've seen so far. Let's start off with the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets, they're known as the villains. You know, with Kyrie and KD. These guys, they haven't had much coverage nationally for real. But the only time they have had coverage really is if something negative happens. So far, the Brooklyn Nets, they are currently 4-4. They're at 500, and people have seen them lose certain games to like teams like the Charlotte Hornets, for example, and people would be like, you know, these guys aren't ready yet, blah, blah, blah. You know, the whole LeBron fans and just fans that don't really like KD and Kyrie no more. But here's the thing. People forget that the Brooklyn Nets, not the Brooklyn Nets, but the Miami Heat, the Heatles, a.k.a. the Heatles, with Bosh, LeBron, and Wade, their first season together back in 2011, they started out 9-8. They wasn't clicking on all cylinders right away. So people forget that, you know, majority of the time with a new roster, you know, the chemistry isn't all the way there yet. It takes time, and especially during this pandemic that we're going through right now. You know, training camp was shorter this year. These guys haven't practiced much, so it's going to take a minute. And right now, they're currently without Spencer Dinwiddie. Spencer Dinwiddie's out for the year with a torn ACL, so they're trying to adjust with that. But what I'm seeing for the Brooklyn Nets, they can still be a top 3 team in the East at the end of the day, and they'll be one of the top 3 teams contending for the NBA Finals. Now, what they have to figure out is Kyrie. In my opinion, I think Kyrie should really take on an Allen Iverson role. If you guys remember the 2011 Philadelphia 76ers, before Allen Iverson made a transition to a full-time shooting guard, he was originally a point guard with the Philadelphia 76ers. But we found out, but Larry Brown came in and found out that Iverson was a much better player coming off of screens and just moving out without the ball in general. And Allen Iverson is one of the best to ever do it as far as moving without the ball. So I think Kyrie can really make that transition. But the only way this is going to work is if the Brooklyn Nets have a solid point guard. They really need a point guard right now since Spencer Dinwiddie went down. Like a guy who can run sets and distribute the ball and just run the offense. And you don't necessarily need a star point guard to do that. Like with the Philadelphia 76ers team back in 2001, they got a guy, Eric Snow. And Eric Snow, you know, he wasn't like a top point guard. You know, he wasn't flash or anything. He wasn't like really a scorer, but he knew how to run sets and he knew how to get guys in position, and he knew how to play defense as well. So I think that's what the Brooklyn Nets need. Now, I don't know who would be available for the Brooklyn Nets to fill that role, but if they could find a point guard that's solid, that stature, you know, I think it would benefit them in the long run. And another thing with the Brooklyn Nets is they need to find I think they need to find a number 4 as well. Because Kevin Durant, while he is tall, he's 7 foot, and you know he can play the 4, but I don't think he should play the 4 for that long of a period of time. I mean, I would actually prefer Kevin Durant to go back to number 3 and start guarding, you know, small forwards more often. That's just me, you know, because Kevin Durant, while he can take some physicality, over the course of the game, you know, it can wear you down. And when you're in the fourth quarter and those critical stretches, you know, you might not have like the stamina, or you might not have the energy to, you know, finish strong and everything. And I'm not saying Kevin Durant isn't capable, because we've seen Kevin Durant's been capable throughout his career. It's just that it will help the Nets long term to preserve KD in that nature. And we got to remember, as great as KD has been so far this season, he's a guy that you would need in the playoffs. He's a closer, he's a finisher. So I think it will benefit the Nets well in the long run just to make that move as well. Now, like I said, I don't know who will be available at the 4 for the Nets. The Nets cap situation could be in flux maybe with the contracts they have on their team, but I think they can pull it out at some point, during the trade deadline. And one more thing with the Brooklyn Nets. Now, the Brooklyn Nets, they figured out that Jarrett Allen is a much better player than DeAndre Jordan. And I think they've already made a transition to start Jarrett Allen. You see, last game against the Utah Jazz, he held his own against Rudy Gobert. He outplayed him and everything. And Jarrett Allen, he's just more active, and he's more active, he's more fluid, and he's more athletic. And he can protect the rim better than DeAndre Jordan. DeAndre Jordan, he's older now, and he's more on the downside of his career, in my opinion. So I think that was the move the Nets needed to make. And also, just to conclude on the Brooklyn Nets, they just need to get better defensively. Like, defensively, I've seen them stand around quite a bit. And this was kind of my fear with, Steve Nash and / Mike D'Antoni, really, transition with as the head coach. Those two, they worked things out in Phoenix. Phoenix was one of the best offensive teams that we've seen in NBA history. They have no problem getting that down, but it's the defense that's an issue with. It's the defense that was an issue with them back then, and it's kind of translated now. So I would like for the Brooklyn Nets to get better defensively overall. And once they get that down, they're going to become a dangerous team. But in the meantime, it's early, and I think the Nets will, at some point, will get on a long winning streak to silence the haters a little bit and let people know that this team is talented. They're still pretty deep, and they can make a run at the NBA Finals. Speaking of teams in New York, let's talk about the New York Knicks, man. The New York Knicks. Now, the New York Knicks has been one of the laughing stocks in the past decade or so here in the NBA. They haven't been to the NBA Finals since 1999, and they haven't won a playoff series since 2013 when they beat the Celtics in the first round. We're seeing great basketball from Julius Randle. Julius Randle has gone up another level this year, and if he keeps up at this pace, he may be the All-Star representative in the East. Now, as everyone knows, the NBA All-Star game is not going to happen this year. It got canceled in Indiana. We're in the pandemic, so the teams are still going to be selected. And I believe if the New York Knicks can continue at this pace and just scratch the surface over 500, Julius Randle should definitely be a representative out East. And we got to give credit to Tom Thibodeau as well. Tom Thibodeau, I already knew that Tom Thibodeau was going to have them play harder and play better. I mean, I could just tell from the first preseason game, he was out coaching like it was the NBA playoffs, getting in the ref's ear and just sweating it out and everything, just yelling the guys to get in position and everything. And so far it's worked. Now, my concern with Tom Thibodeau is throughout the years, he has ran his players into the ground. And to the point where key guys eventually get hurt. And that's just one concern that you got to have with Tom Thibodeau. Now, I will say this. If the Knicks somehow make the playoffs, it'll definitely be a great accomplishment from year one. Because I didn't see the Knicks becoming a playoff contender, but, I said in the beginning it'll take them like maybe 2, maybe 3 years to, transition to becoming a playoff team again. But so far, they're pretty much ahead of schedule. They're currently 5-3 right now, and then we'll just see what happens moving forward with the New York Knicks. Now, as far as the other guys on the team, R.J. Barrett, he's improved a little bit, but he's still kind of stiff. I don't know if we're ever gonna get that full fluidity from R.J. Barrett as far as when he drives to the basket and whenever he makes his move. Like, he's still kind of stiff out there. He's still a bit easy to guard, but I can tell the improvement is there with R.J. Barrett in his game. And as far as the rest of the Knicks roster, Obi Toppin, he's currently down with an injury right now. We'll see how he looks coming back from injury, but I just know that during the preseason, he looked very impressive. And once he comes back, I think the Knicks may take off a little further. So we'll see what happens with the Knicks. You never know. They just might make the playoffs this year. All right, and moving forward, we're going to go to the best of the East. We're going to go to the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, I was down on the Philadelphia 76ers as they currently 7-1. I just felt, we've seen in the past the Philadelphia 76ers, they are usually a regular season team. They perform pretty well in the regular season anyway. but it seems like they've gone a step further. But I do want to talk about the main culprit, Ben Simmons. Everybody's talking about Ben Simmons. Everybody's talking about how Ben Simmons is pretty much content with his game, and we're not sure if he's going to get better or not, and we don't know if he wants to get better or not. So far, Ben, I mean, he's been solid, but we also seen the same stuff. Ben refusing to take a jump shot, even though he did take one recently not too long ago. It's just that he doesn't take it at a decent enough frequency to where it will help out the Philadelphia offense even more. But what has kind of masked Ben Simmons' game a bit is the acquisition of Seth Curry. Seth Curry was a huge acquisition for the Philadelphia 76ers. He can shoot, he can move out the ball, and he can handle the rock, he can run the offense if needed. So I think Seth Curry coming along in that Doc Rivers system has helped mask a lot of problems that the Sixers have had in the past. Now, will this keep up? We don't know. All these teams, they can have a good stretch and a bad stretch. And I think Philadelphia regression could come. I don't know if it was going to come soon or not, but the regression may hit a little bit. But at the same time, I could be wrong about the Philadelphia Sixers this entire time, because at first I just didn't have them in the playoffs, man. Like I wasn't sure if Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons were going to be on the same page or not. Like I knew about the acquisitions they did make, but I just didn't know how it was going to play out. And so far, it's playing pretty well. And speaking of Joel Embiid, he's still playing like one of the more dominant centers in the league. I have seen him gone down with an injury here and there, but he was able to return to the game. It's just that with Joel Embiid, like, you just got to be concerned about his health moving forward. And I just don't know. I just don't know if he's going to last. I don't know if Ben Simmons is going to last throughout the year. But if they do, Philly, they might be able to do something in the playoffs. But here's the thing with Philadelphia, man. Like, at some point, Ben Simmons is going to have to find that confidence within himself to take a few more shots. Because in the playoffs, the game slows down. And they're going to have you running half-court sets. And we've seen throughout the course of Ben Simmons' career that he can't run a half-court offense. He can't run a half-court set. And we've seen defenses back off of Ben Simmons to where they would just guard the perimeter and just dare him to shoot. And Ben still refuses to shoot the ball, or he's just hesitant to shoot the ball. So that's the one thing you got to look out for in Philadelphia. I mean, as far as the other teams, the Magic, they're 6-2 right now, but they just lost Markelle Fultz for the year, unfortunately, with torn ACL. That might affect them down the line, unfortunately. But, we'll see how it happens with Orlando. We'll see how they adjust. I mean, Cole Anthony's there. And, but right now, Cole Anthony is currently struggling. He's shooting well under 30% from the field, and hopefully he improves that. And because they're definitely going to need him to step up major for the match at the whole water. And then you also got the Pacers. They playing well. They was a playoff team from last year. Right now they're out T.J. Warren, but so Domantas Sabonis is having a heck of a season. Double-double, over 20 and 10, and I think he's on pace to finally get his All-Star selection as well. And then Victor Oladipo, he's found the rhythm. He started to get closer to the player that he once was before he had a serious injury himself. So that's good news for Indiana, because right now they definitely gonna need it with T.J. Warren currently sidelined, and then Malcolm Brogdon. He's one of the best point guards in the league at controlling the pace. He's just a smooth player. He just knows how to control the pace. He knows how to play the traditional point guard position well. So Indiana, they gonna be tough. I think they're gonna make the playoffs still, and they're gonna be a problem for a team in the first round. And then, of course, you got the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, Giannis, still doing Giannis things in the regular season. They're 5-3 right now. And then you got other teams as the Cleveland Cavaliers at 4-4. Colin Sexton. We need to talk about Colin Sexton, because a lot of people wrote off Colin Sexton as a player, and I just didn't understand that. Colin Sexton has always been a dog back to high school days, and people just wasn't sure if his game would transition to the NBA well, and right now it's looking like it's transitioning well. I mean, he's currently averaging 26 points per game right now. I mean, it's a huge improvement. Him and Darius Garland, they looking like the next CJ and Dame right now out in Cleveland. So the Cleveland Cavaliers, I don't know if they're going to keep up this pace, but I think moving forward, they'll improve some. It's just a matter of them making the right decisions in the front office. And then lastly, we'll talk about the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks, they're currently at 500 right now, but I think they still going to get better throughout the course of the year. Trae Young has solid veterans around him now, Bogdanovich and Rondo, even though Rondo's out. But Rondo, he's not too big on regular season anyway. He's a guy that is more so getting ready for the playoffs. And then you got Danilo Gallinari as well. And then you still got the young talented John Collins and Cam Reddish. Cam Reddish, I mean, I expect him to take a big leap still, but it's early. And Trey Young, he's still putting up his numbers, from last year. And right now, the Atlanta Hawks, they're in a position to make the playoffs. I think they're going to make the playoffs, and I think they'll get on a run to where they'll be on a big winning streak. And moving forward, they're going to be tough. Now, let's head out west, man. Let's head out west. I want to start out with the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks, they're currently struggling right now. Luka Doncic, he's working his way back from, trying to get in shape and everything. Unfortunately, he hasn't got back to being his complete self yet. But the other night, it looked like Luka looked like the Luka that we've been accustomed to seeing in this early part of his career. As he went off against the Houston Rockets. But right now, Dallas, they currently 3-4. They're gonna get back on track eventually. I mean, they still got a nice group of veterans around them, but I know they're gonna need Kristaps Porzingis at some point. And I think once he gets back, and if Kristaps can prove that he can stay healthy, the Dallas Mavericks will start to ascend a little more out west. And then with the Portland Trailblazers, I think it's time for them to make that transition to break that CJ and Dame backcourt up, because they just getting cooked in the backcourt on defense. You can't have two guards in your backcourt getting cooked on defense. It's open season. Every time you watch the Portland Trailblazers play, the Trailblazers, they've been having to outscore teams to try to win games, and that's just not a good formula. They did make key acquisitions in Robert Covington and Derrick Jones Jr., and then they brought Enes Kanter back for scoring, but Covington and Derrick Jones Jr., I mean, that's just not enough to match the other issues that Portland has. And Jusuf Nurkic, he's not back. He's not fully back yet. Enes Kanter, he's a guy that's food down low. I mean, he's not a good defender, especially against a skilled big. Portland has all kinds of problems. They just need to go ahead and pull the plug on CJ McCollum, because I think they're going to keep Dame. I think Dame wants to be a lifer. He wants to be in Portland for his entire career. So I think CJ needs to find a good home. And I'm sure CJ wants to actually be a point guard himself, because I think CJ's game will go a lot further if he has the ball in his hands. It's just a matter of what Portland's going to – it's just a matter of what trade suitor is available for CJ. And we'll see what happens moving forward. Now, I want to talk about the Golden State Warriors. We see that Chef Curry is back in the fold. Early on, people was making jokes and slandering him because he wasn't looking like himself at first. And people just completely ignored the fact that the Warriors haven't played in months. And, Steph was recovering from COVID and everything. And it took a minute for Steph to finally get in the rhythm. But as I just got through talking about Portland, Dame Dollar woke up the sleeping giant, talking about, Steph is not getting him looks like how he used to. He's having a rough time adjusting to, his new teammates and everything, and as far as adjusting his game overall to the new roster. And let me tell you, that woke up Steph, and Steph dropped 62 on Portland's head. And since then, Steph's been balling out. You know what I mean? He kind of had a rough one the other night, but Steph. But here's the thing with Steph. Steph has been a guy that his greatest asset is moving without the ball. He's basically Reggie Miller with handles, and with Draymond Green back for Golden State, it helps out Steph a lot. You know what I mean? Steph doesn't have that ball in his hands as much, and Steph can play his game more. You know what I mean? And while speaking on Draymond, he still looks out of shape to me, but he is distributing the ball. His distribution is coming back, so he's being a great distributor of the ball. But Draymond, of course, he needs to lose a few more pounds and get more in shape, so you can really get the full Draymond, get that dog in him. But what I've liked from Draymond is that Draymond is showing leadership out on the court, and he's cheering on the sideline, encouraging his teammates. He picked up Oubre and Wiggins when they was down, because those two guys were struggling early on, and they starting to pick it up a little bit. So I think Golden State, they still gonna make the playoffs. I don't know if they're gonna do anything special in the playoffs. They might be able to get out the first round, but other than that, You know,
They're not making the playoffs.
you don't think they're gonna make it? How come you don't think how come you don't think so, TJ?
Draymond he ain't that.
You don't think Draymond's gonna get back to being that?
Nope.
That's interesting. We'll see what happens with that, man. But I think Draymond is slowly coming along as a player, and I think it'll be just enough for the Warriors. Now, I will say this. I don't think Kelly Oubre is a great fit. I just don't think he fits in that system well. I mean, I could be wrong, even though he is playing well. So I don't know. I think the Warriors might need to find a trade suitor for him, in my opinion. And I think they may need another guard to help stuff out a little bit. Because right now, Brad Wanamaker, he was a solid player for Boston, but right now he's not doing it in this current system. So that's something to look out for with Golden State. But Steph Curry, I think Steph Curry is pretty much back, and he silenced a lot of people. So moving along with that, the LA Clippers. I mean, this is a team that I was wrong about so far. I didn't have them missing the playoffs. I had them making the playoffs, but I had them like in the bottom four out west. Right now, the acquisition of Nicholas Batum is working dividends for them. He's been solid. He's been, he's looking like how he did in Portland, with his all-around ability on offense and defense. And defense, he's kind of held his own too. Now, Kawhi has been Kawhi. Kawhi hasn't really lost anything. But the main concern still is Paul George, man, because if you remember, this team got blown out by 50 against the Dallas Mavericks. And they was without Kawhi for that game. And that was a game where Paul George could have stepped up and proved that, I'm back. You know what I mean? All you guys, you're a little slander or whatever, you're talking all this trash on me throughout the years. I'm going to show y'all. That was a show and prove game for Paul George, and he didn't show up or anything. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know with the Clippers. Like, I'm not fully sold on their team. Like, the pieces involved along with Batum, like Serge Ibaka, he's playing well. I mean, but Luke Kennard, he's still trying to figure it out. He's still trying to figure out his role and still trying to get back in the fold of things because I think he's coming off an injury as well. And I know they got Marcus Morris back too, but that entire roster, man, it's got some bad fits in there still. Like with Marcus Morris, I just don't trust him in the big games. And Reggie Jackson, he's still doing Reggie Jackson things, man. Like at times, Reggie Jackson, he just does some dumb things with the basketball, and he's a guy that you just can't play. But what I've seen for Tyronn Lue in comparison to Doc Rivers is this: like he hasn't played Reggie Jackson as much in comparison to Doc Rivers, so Tyronn Lue already knows about Reggie Jackson and how he is. So I think Tyronn Lue he's doing a pretty solid job so far. Just other than them getting blown out by Dallas and the Clippers, they are going to be one of the top teams in the West still. But at the end of the day, we know what happens in the playoffs with playoff P, way off P. So I mean that's that for the Clippers, man. I just can't see them. I'm having a hard time believing they'll get to the Western Conference Finals. But if they do, I mean, to face the Lakers, as I will get to them in a sec, I mean, we'll see what happens with that. Now, here's a team that I was pretty high on after they acquired this point guard, a point guard that the Phoenix Suns actually needed. Chris Paul got the Phoenix Suns balling, man. Devin Booker, and for a minute, Devin Booker was on his way out, even though the Suns had their run in the bubble. They went undefeated despite missing the playoffs still. But, Chris Paul just adds another element. Chris Paul is one of the best floor generals of his generation. I think he's going to go down as one of the best point guards that ever played the game. Unfortunately, his playoff shortcomings, like, at times, Chris Paul, he'll get close to achieving something that he hasn't achieved before, or he'll get close to just win the playoff series in general, and he wants it so bad that at times he'll try too hard and it'll cause him to turn the ball over in critical situations. But other than that, man, Chris Paul, he's going to help you win ball games, and we've seen it throughout his career in New Orleans, with the Clippers, with the Rockets, and with Oklahoma City Thunder, and now you see him with Phoenix. I mean, Phoenix, they're the second best team out west right now. And along with Devin Booker, he's been pretty solid this year. And and DeAndre Ayton, he's been doing this thing as well. But we need to talk about Mikal Bridges. Mikal Bridges has been a key component for the Phoenix Suns. Right now, he's one of the contenders for most improved player. Excuse me. He's taking his game up to a whole nother level as far as offensively, because we already knew how solid he was defensively. We already knew he was good at rebounding the basketball. So along with that, I think the acquisition of Chris Paul is helping the Phoenix Suns like improve their talent overall. Now, I don't know if Phoenix is going to keep it up as far as being the top 4 team out west, but at the end of the day, they're going to make the playoffs, and they're going to be a scary first round team for whoever. Excuse me. All right, finally, let's get down to the Los Angeles Lakers. They're the number 1 team out west. I mean, as expected, but it looked like they were coasting at the beginning of the season. But I think people should really just get used to, LeBron coasting in the regular season. Like, and you got to remember, along with them and the Miami Heat, those guys just recently played in the NBA Finals, so they've had less rest than any other team. But with the Lakers, they can kind of get away with that just due to the transactions they have made with Dennis Schroeder and Montrezl Harrell and Marcus Gasol. Even though Marcus Gasol, he looks like molasses out there, like he's having a rough time moving his feet out there. I mean, Marcus Gasol, we kind of knew he was near the end of his career anyway, but Marcus Gasol could still be a key component for the Lakers. It's just that the Lakers, they might need another big man at some point during the trade deadline. But Marcus Gasol, he's a highly intelligent basketball player. He can still help the Lakers in other areas. But as far as him starting and, playing all these quality minutes, I don't know. I don't think he's going to last the entire year. So the Lakers, they may need another big man on their roster to help out in that area. And as far as the rest of the roster is concerned, THT, he's actually getting some playing time. And whenever he's had some playing time, he's been solid for them. So, it can only ramp up from here as far as THT's contributions and everything. But LeBron, AD, they're going to beat themselves and everything. It's the regular season. They just going through the motions right now, despite them winning. And come playoff time, they'll be the best version of themselves. Now it's going to be tougher. I think it's going to be a little tougher for the Lakers this year, honestly. Whether they get to the finals or not. And here's my thing, man. Like, everybody, I just want to talk about Kuzma real quick before I move on. Kyle Kuzma, everybody's still getting on this kid, man. Like, people just do not understand that Kyle Kuzma needs to be in a offense where everything is structured, like everything is motion, like. But playing because playing alongside LeBron, like, he's just a standstill shooter. Like, he can't play his normal game, man. And that's what happens at times when he's out there making mistakes and missing shots, or whatever, because he can't create his own offense for himself. Now, I'm not saying he should be like a star or anything, but he can be like a solid third option if used properly. And, LeBron, he's just hell-bent on staying with his same system that he's been accustomed to since AAU ball. Just run the pick and roll, or, have guys, stand out in the corner, like out on the wing, out on the corners. So, but the Lakers, they have a deep enough roster to where they'll be fine. It wouldn't surprise me if they end up being the number 1 team out west. And that's all I got from the NBA. As we'll transition on to the NFL playoffs. It's playoff weekend, wild card weekend. It's a little different. We got 2 more games added to wild card weekend because there's only 1 team with a bye. Chiefs on a bye out in the AFC, and in the NFC it's the Packers. State Farm. State Farm commercial with Pat and Aaron Rodgers. So, all right. So we're gonna start with the first game: Buffalo Bills and the Indianapolis Colts. A lot of people are on the Buffalo Bills, and rightfully so. Josh Allen was an MVP candidate this year. He balled out. And the acquisitions of Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley was a key factor in that. Like, it took his game up to a whole nother level. Like, last year, he improved here and there, but you could tell that Josh Allen needed that solid number 1 wide receiver to take his game to another level. And the acquisition of Stephon Diggs has helped him out a lot, because Stephon Diggs is one of the best route runners in the NFL. And right now, Buffalo's on a tear offensively. I think they're averaging close to 40 points a game in their last few games, which is crazy. Then you got the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts, they've been pretty solid defensively. Jonathan Taylor, it seemed like he's finally figured it out, because at first he was not finding the holes at first, and because the Indianapolis, they was blocking well for him. I mean, Indianapolis, they still play like they have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and Jonathan Taylor was just not picking the hole well. He was thinking he was still at Wisconsin. Like, it's totally different, bro. Like, you're not gonna get no open lanes like that. Like, as soon as you see a little crease, you just gotta hit it right then and there. And I think he figured it out. And he ended the regular season well. So, Indianapolis, they playing some good, solid ball. I mean, Phillip Rivers, he's cutting down the turnovers a little bit. But I'm going to get to him in a sec, because he is going to be the determining factor of this game. Now, a lot of people, like I said earlier, a lot of people say they're on the Bills. But I truly believe people are going to be in for a shock in this first game. I think the Colts can win this game. And here's why I believe the Colts can win this game. The Colts, like I mentioned, they have one of the best offensive lines in the league, and the Buffalo's defense struggled against the run. And me being a Chiefs fan, the Chiefs was able to run the ball on Buffalo easily, and there was other teams that was able to have success on Buffalo against the run as well. And the Colts got the offensive line to bully the Bills defense around. And in the playoffs, you got to run the ball. And I think the run the ball is going to settle for the play action pass. And here's another thing that Buffalo struggles against. They struggle against tight ends as a result of their subpar run defense. And the Colts, they use the tight ends quite often. They use about 3 tight ends in their offense. They use Mo Alley Cox, Jack Doyle, and Trey Burton quite often in their offense. And we're starting to see that, T.Y. Hilton, he was starting to come along a little bit near the end of the season, but I think his matchup against Tre'Davious White is going to be too much. So he may not be a factor that much in this game, but all the other guys can definitely be a factor in this game. And if the Colts, as long as the Colts are able to control the clock and keep Josh Allen, that Bills offense, on the sideline, they can win the game. Now, the determining factor is going to be Phillip Rivers. Can Phillip Rivers take care of the ball? Can he take care of the ball to where he won't throw a crucial turnover if the game is close late in the game? Like, if the Colts are behind and they need him to go down the field to drive and win the game, can he do that? Or can the Colts, control the game to where, the Bills will be on the sideline long enough to where their defense will be rested enough to, try to contain Josh Allen? And I think the Colts defense has the core to do that. They led by Darius Leonard at linebacker. You still got Justin Houston there. You got DeForest Buckner. And then you got the young safety and Julian Blackmon. I felt like he was snubbed from the Pro Bowl, even though he's a rookie. He's already one of the best safeties in the league. So they got a nice nucleus out in Indy. And to me, I think the Colts pulled out the upset against the Bills in Buffalo. All right, so the next game we have here is we have the Seahawks against the Rams. I believe the Seahawks are going to win this game, but in the past, Russell Wilson has struggled the most against this Rams team. This Rams defense has pretty much had his number. But the thing with the Rams is this. We don't know if Jared Goff's going to play. I mean, Jared Goff's doing everything possible to try to go out there and play. He's got a thumb injury right now. I think it's slightly broken, if I'm not mistaken. But even with Jared Goff or without Jared Goff, I just don't think the Rams are built for the playoffs, in my opinion. I think the Rams overall this year, they look kind of soft at times. And I mean, especially against the Jets. The Jets, lose to the Jets at home, I mean, that's pretty embarrassing. You can't lose to a team like that. I'm sorry. You can't lose to a winless team like that. I mean, because, here's the thing with the Rams. The funny part about the Rams is this. They'll beat good teams, and then sometimes they'll struggle against the sorry teams. And not only did they lose to the Jets this year, they also lost to the 49ers. I mean, the Niners had their number too. So I just can't trust the Rams overall. At the end of the day, the Seahawks, they got enough weapons, and Russell Wilson is experienced. He's been there before. He's been to 2 Super Bowls, 1-1. So I think Russell Wilson alone, with his playmaking and everything, and I think Chris Carson is going to be a huge factor in this game as well. I feel like the Seahawks should definitely balance it out, take a little bit of pressure off Russell Wilson. And if they can run the ball solid, they'll beat the Rams. So I got the Seahawks in that game. And then we got the primetime matchup for Saturday. We got the Washington football team against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this is another game where the public is pretty high on Tampa Bay Buccaneers. it seems like people think that they don't have a shot. I mean, it seems like people think that the Washington football team doesn't have a shot. Now, there has been bulletin board material early in the week. Chase Young calling out, Tom Brady, saying that he's ready for him and everything. And then you got Bruce Arians, he calling out his shots as well, in response. So everything's building up for this primetime game. Now, on paper, here's the thing with Tampa. On paper, they do look good. They look like they clicking all of a sudden. But to me, throughout the course of the season, they're either too hot or they too cold. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know. They got all the talent and everything. Everything on paper looks great. But we have seen in the past with Tom Brady in the playoffs, like against the teams with a good to great front seven, he struggles against them. And I think Washington has that makeup with their defense. Chase Young, he's rookie. He's my defensive rookie of the year by far. And then you got Ryan Kerrigan. And then you got other guys. You got Montez Sweat and Deron Payne. That front seven in Washington is pretty good. And they're young. So they kind of got that Giants makeup, that New York Giants makeup from recent time. When Eli Manning was the quarterback. And the Giants had their front line with Strahan, Umeor, Justin Tuck, and others. Kiwanuka, Jason Pierre-Paul. So I think Washington, here's my thing. We've looked at the injury report, and Alex Smith, he looked like he's trying to give it a go. I know recently they backup Heineke was taking the first team snaps. I don't know if that's changed or not today, but if Alex Smith does play, and I'm not saying Alex Smith is anything special or anything, but we've seen Alex Smith actually perform well against Tom Brady-led teams. I mean, you got to remember a few years ago on Sunday Night Football when New England had their Super Bowl ring ceremony. Chiefs came in and crashed the party, and Alex Smith had a monster game then. And then a few years prior to that, on Monday Night Football, when the Chiefs broke the Guinness Book of World Records for being the loudest stadium in NFL history, he had a solid performance against the Patriots. I mean, that was a Tom Brady-led team as well. So this might be another one of those instances with Alex Smith. Now, I'm not saying he's going to go for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns or anything like that, but I think he'll just be good enough. I mean, Terry McLaurin, I think he's going to be a problem for Carlton Davis. And because Carlton Davis, while he's still a solid defensive back, he's not on that top tier of defensive backs. Like, he can't be beat. I mean, we've seen it when he was going up against Tyreek Hill. He was having a rough time. And Terry McLaurin is a guy that he's not as fast as Tyreek, but he's still pretty fast, and he can run routes with the best of them. He's one of the best route runners in the league already, and he's young. So I think that's a matchup where Washington can win at. And then you got Antonio Gibson. He's been a solid running back for Washington all season long. So that being said, I got the Washington football team winning. Now, we're going to transition to the Sunday games. The first game starting out here is the Tennessee Titans and the Baltimore Ravens. Now, this game is in Tennessee this time. And it's kind of like a mixed bag here. Some people, I think the majority is leaning towards Tennessee slightly, but this game is more of a coin flip than anything. But to me, Baltimore is a much better team on the road. I think, to me, for what I've seen from Lamar Jackson in his career so far, I think Lamar Jackson thrives better in situations where, he'll be in an opposing stadium and there's opposing fans. And I think he thrives off of, people just, talking trash on him, the boos and stuff like that. I think he thrives off of wanting to silence the opposing crowd. So I think Lamar Jackson's going to have a much better game this time around. And I think Lamar's going to ball out, man. Tennessee, they haven't played well defensively all year. They've been giving it up themselves. Like, we seen recently they was giving up against Houston even though they won. And they gave it up against Green Bay as well. So their defense is suspect and they can't be beat. And Baltimore has the running game too. Like, it's not Derrick Henry. You know what I mean? Derrick Henry's a one-man show. He's this generation's Earl Campbell. Derrick Henry's going to do his thing. But Baltimore, they got the makeup, man. They're gonna run some with Lamar. They're gonna run some with J.K. Dobbins. They were preserving Mark Ingram for the playoffs. He's gonna be a factor. Gus Edwards, all those guys. And I think that running game is gonna open it up for Lamar Jackson to have them little holes to throw to, like, find Mark Andrews up the middle, or he might hit Hollywood Brown deep one time. So at the end of the day, it's gonna be a good game, and I think Baltimore's gonna win it. So the next game we're gonna transition to is the Saints and Bears. The Saints at home. They're gonna have. It looks like they're gonna have Alvin Kamara after him originally testing positive for COVID. Looks like everything's a go as far as him returning. The Saints, they usually good at home. The Bears, they can make this game competitive, but I'm having a hard time trusting Mitch Trubisky. I'm sorry, man. Like Mitch, he got on the roll when he got back in the lineup, but I just can't see it with Mitch, man. I'm sorry. The Saints defense gonna show up, and I think they're gonna cause Mitch to have a rough day. But the Saints, I think Alvin Kamara does his thing, per usual, and Drew Brees, he'll be good enough, but Alvin Kamara is gonna lead the troops again. I'm not saying he ain't gonna have no 6 touchdown performance or anything like that, but he'll be great for the Saints, and I think the Saints advance in that game. Now, the last game is the Steelers and Browns. I was originally high on the Cleveland Browns, when I first saw this matchup. These teams just played in Week 17 because I think the Steelers, they're just overrated. I feel like they was overrated all season long, even though they started out 11-0. And when the injuries started to pile up, they was exposed even more. And I think right now, Cleveland's situation with the head coach, Stefanski, he's not going to be there. I think that's going to be a killer. So as of right now, I don't know who's going to be the fill-in head coach, who's going to be calling plays or anything, but I think that's a killer in my opinion because Stefanski, he's mainly controlling the offense. They have one of the best offensive lines in the league. They got the duo with Chubb and Hunt, which is arguably the best in the league, which could set up the flash and pass well for Baker Mayfield to hit his targets, Landry and Austin Hooper and those young receivers. But I think missing their head coach is going to hurt them a little bit. And defensively, they're going to be solid, but I just think overall, this was the first time Cleveland has been in the playoffs in a very long time. And I think the inexperience is going to kick in for Cleveland in this one. I think the Steelers just squeak it out. I think the Steelers defense, despite them missing a few key injuries, they're going to step it up even more. Micah Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt, they've been two of the best defensive players in the league. I think that alone will carry them this time. They should be able to cause a few turnovers, and not just those guys on that defense. We got Stephon Tuitt and Cam Hayward as well. So I think overall, I think the Steelers can win in the trenches quite a bit. Now offensively, we gotta see how Ben looks, man, because Ben, he looked like I think Ben should consider being a family man after this season, honestly. He just doesn't look that great to me. But the Steelers can win in the short passing game and the screen game against the Cleveland Browns. Like Ben is good at getting rid of the ball and everything. It's just a matter of the receivers being able to hold on to the ball. But I feel like the Steelers should incorporate the run a little more. This is the game where they're gonna need James Conner, and if they incorporate James Conner a bit more in his offense, they should be able to win the game. So I got Pittsburgh. And that's my predictions for this weekend as far as the NFL playoffs is concerned. As we transition to the NFL playoffs, I want to talk about a wide receiver that gets underappreciated or doesn't get talked about enough. He played for the Green Bay Packers. Unfortunately, his career was cut short due to a neck injury at the age of 29. This was one of the greatest receivers in my time, in my opinion. But before I transition into him, I just want to go back to a tweet that I had said a while back. I mentioned this back last month in December. When Terrell Owens made his appearance on Randy Moss's podcast, he said he was the second greatest receiver of all time, in front of Jerry and behind Randy Moss. Now, when I seen that, I said T.O. was a hard worker and great in his own right, but he wasn't better than Sterling Sharp. And everybody in the comments, was going crazy, quote tweet me and all this other stuff. So I had to show people proof of how great Sterling Sharp is, and that's what I'm gonna do today. As we transition to my new segment called Way Back When, as we talk about Sterling Sharp and how great he was.
Jerome, put on that Bobby Womack.
Nah, girl, I want to go way back. Oh, yeah, check this out.
Sterling Sharp was born on April 6, 1965 in Chicago, Illinois. He grew up in Glenville, Georgia. He along with his brother Shannon. They stayed in a 1,000-foot, center block home. And you guys get the full story about that. You guys actually look that up on Club Shay J's podcast today, full story and everything. But we want to talk about how great receiver Sterling Sharp is today. Sterling, originally growing up, he was actually a quarterback, a linebacker, and a running back when he played in high school. So when he made his transition to wide receiver at South Carolina, it was easy. Like, he broke all the records at South Carolina. And he still has all the records today except for the single season mark that was broke by Sidney Rice. But as we move forward with that, Sterling Sharp became the number 7 overall pick in the 1988 NFL draft. And from there on, he made an impact right away. And people want to talk about that he had Brett Favre, you know what I mean? But that wasn't the case originally. He played with mediocre to average quarterbacks. I mean, he played with the Magic Man, Don Majkowski, and then he played with Mike Tomczak for a bit. But other than that, man, I just want to talk about why Sterling Sharp is great in his own right. Sterling Sharp, he was just as fast and not faster than T.O. He was strong, he was physical, and he could run the slants well. And his run after the catch was amazing. Like, after the catch, he was just a physical specimen. Like, he was hard to bring down. And as I go through this transition, and for example, he runs like a stutter and go. As an example in this clip right here with Rod Woodson, and that was like Brett Favre's first start, as per se. He lines up against Rod Woodson. He runs a stutter and go. The way he flies off the ball, like, every time you see him run a route, he flew off the ball. Like, it was just amazing. Like, and it had the defensive backpedaling quicker than expected, just because he was that quick off the line. And as far as like being able to sell the stutter, like, he was great at selling the routes. This was a guy that, to me, before Randy Moss, he was the original 84. This was a guy that was really the first big receiver that we've ever seen with great speed and size and strength and the ability to just run smooth routes. Like, at the time, he was the second best receiver behind Jerry Rice. A lot of people talk about Michael Irvin, but to me, this guy was better than Michael Irvin, in my opinion. He was the second best receiver behind Jerry Rice. And his route running was up there with Jerry Rice as far as how smooth it was. Now, as he sells the stutter and go, you know what I mean, he hits the brakes and he sinks the hips while he makes the defensive back burst downhill. So, I mean, in this clip with Rod Woodson here, he does a great job with that. He makes Rod Woodson bite on the route, and he's open for the touchdown. And Sterling Sharp did that quite well in his career at selling the route and making DBs anticipate earlier than expected, and they end up getting beat. Now, if you don't believe me, you can just ask Deion Sanders, because I have a few clips here of Deion Sanders lined up against Sterling Sharp. Deion will tell you, of all the receivers that he guarded, all the receivers he covered in NFL history, he said Sterling Sharp was the guy that gave him the most fits. And I'll play the clip here as you can hear from Deion himself in these two.
Like Sterling Sharp, big and fast and strong, all the components. Just different guys. You just got to know what you're dealing with.
Now that you heard from Deion himself, here's a question I'm gonna ask to y'all. Are y'all gonna go against Deion's word? I mean, Deion is the best corner that we've seen in NFL history. So if you think Deion's a liar, then I don't know what to tell you on that. Now, not only Sterling Sharp had these abilities, he also took a lot of hits across the middle, and Sterling was able to get up from him and just go on to the next play. He took a lot of punishment over the middle, and that's a credit to him and his strength and his workout regimen, because this was a guy that ran a 4.4 and he benched over 500 pounds. So, I mean, you got to have incredible strength to be able to do all that. And Sterling Sharp, he was a guy that was so physical that you couldn't really play bump and run physical coverage like that. Like, if you tried to play bump and run, he'll just find a way to get inside with his hands. He found a way to get inside with his hands and just get you out the way, and he's open. So, and then he'll find a way to catch the ball in the middle, and he'll beat you deep. But now today, today's NFL, you can't really play bump and run coverage like that. I mean, pretty much everything is out in space, and Sterling Sharp would eat in today's era. Like, he would just, oh man, let me tell you, he would just he'll break all kinds of records, man. And I just want to go back to Brett Favre. Now, when he did play with Brett Favre, that's when he was starting to get to the peak of his powers, per se. And like in 1994, like when his career got cut short due to the neck injury, he led the league in touchdowns. I mean, he had 18 touchdowns. And I think, if he had stayed, if he had not gotten hurt, his career had got cut short, he was going to win one, maybe two Super Bowl rings. Because after his career got cut short, 2 years later, the Packers went to the Super Bowl and they won it. So I'm gonna hit people with a few what ifs. Like, if Sterling Sharp's career didn't end, like, we don't know if they would have acquired Andre Rison. Andre Rison might not have been there in Green Bay, because I think they still would have been fine with Sterling Sharp. But if they did still go on ahead and to acquire Andre Rison, then that would have been a scary duo to go up against. You talking about the Spider-Man and Sterling Sharp? Like, come on, man. Like, that's a tough offense to cover right there. And there's another thing that people forget. Like, Brett Favre, he was a rising star in the league, but he wasn't in his final form when he was playing with Sterling Sharp. Like, Sterling Sharp only played with Brett Favre for 3 years, and we seen, like, if you just look up the numbers with Sterling Sharp here, we seen that, his numbers were just up there with one of the greatest receivers of our game. And speaking of that, when you look back at Sterling Sharp's career, when you compare his first 7 years in the NFL, I'm going to display it on the screen right here. You see all these numbers he puts up in comparison to Jerry Rice and T.O. and Randy Moss and Calvin Johnson and Antonio Brown and Julio Jones. Like, he's up there with one of the greatest receivers of our game. And to me, when I ranked my receivers, all-time receiver list, I got him third all time. Like, you can just ignore you can just go into stats and everything, but you gotta ignore all that. We just look at the film overall. I mean, he just stands out among one of the greatest ever. So, it's amazing how, if, for example, Gale Sayers, he's in the Hall of Fame. His career got cut short. We knew how great he was a running back. Like, his fault. Like, it's cool that he makes the Hall of Fame, and I don't mind it, but it's just amazing how the Pro Football Hall of Fame voters aren't giving him that same energy. And this year, I seen that he wasn't even one of the top 132 players even considered to, be like a possible finalist or anything. And like, he wasn't even thought of like being on the preliminary list to be in the class of 2021. And that's just. And we got to fix that. I'm sorry. Sterling Sharp should get more of his flowers today. And at the end of the day, I hope he gets in the Hall of Fame one day. And he deservedly should get in the Hall of Fame. And we just need to recognize that Sterling Sharp was the original 84. And he was really that great. All right, now we conclude this week's episode of CPENN for the Win show. I would like to thank everybody for tuning in. I'd like to thank my executive producer, TJ, in the background. We back at it. We got some more. Back there hitting the dab and doing all this craziness. But we back at it. We got some more new stuff coming along this year for the show. So stay tuned. It's only going to get better from here on out. Until the next episode, we out of here.